Hello, true believers. I am Brian Crosby, creative director of Marvel Themed Entertainment, and welcome to Marvel's Stark Week presented by Citizen. So, we're going to be doing a little how to draw live today. Hope you guys are having a great day. Hope you guys are having fun. As you can see, we're going to be drawing the Hulkbuster. So, there's a lot to do here. This is a really fun character to draw. He's huge. If you've seen any of our other videos, I usually go step by step. So I'm going to be doing that same thing here today. If I ever feel like I'm going too fast for you guys, feel free to watch the video later. You can pause it and get caught up, do the things that you got to do. So just to get us started, you can see I've already started to sketch. So don't worry, you didn't miss anything. This is what I do. I'm giving you guys a little bit of behind the scenes here. So the first thing I do before I even get into drawing a character like this is I do a lot of sketches, basically to find the pose. And so here I'm going to show you a few different kind of pose studies that I did. A lot of times I'll use friends or family to pose for me in different formations, and I kind of use the generic pose that they did, but then draw on top of it, or draw while I'm looking at them, or a photo of them to kind of get the lighting right, the gesture right. So that's something you can do at home. Make sure you draw your friends and your family, your brother, sister, mom, dad, whatever it is that you have around. It really is a huge help in getting to draw these characters correctly. And so I'm going to do this one here. This was the one that everybody decided was their favorite. Very action packed, right? Very Iron Man esque. And so I blew that up, and you can see it's still super rough, super loose. And then what I do is I take a piece of vellum. It's kind of like tracing paper, or I can see the drawing underneath, and I can draw right on top of that. So as you can see, as I mentioned, this is Stark Week. Check this out. I'm wearing this absolutely sick Citizen watch. Proof that Tony Stark has a heart right from the films. Easily the coolest thing I've ever worn, you guys. We're all in lockdown. I'm wearing t-shirt and shorts and this absolutely awesome watch. But so this is going to be fun today, guys. I hope you guys enjoy this and we get in the spirit of Tony Stark. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, you can use whatever you have at home. I'm going old school here, paper and pencil. I'm going to be using a blue colored pencil to do some of my underdrawing. As for any of you who've seen my other videos, you know I like to do. And then I've got other pencils here. This is a size B for doing some of the line work. As you can, being that this is Hulkbuster, there's a ton of line work. And then I've got kind of a heavier weight, a 6B, and I'm going to be doing some of the outlines with that and some of the darker shaded areas. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in, and I don't want you to miss anything, so I'm going to walk you through my process. And, unlike some of the other videos we've done before, this is absolutely live. So if you guys have questions for me, go ahead and throw them our way, and I will do my best to get to as many questions as I possibly can. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and jump right in. So I always like to start with the head. And because, this head is not like a normal humanoid character, it's more oval. So I do that right out of the gate. Okay, just like that. I just kind of sketch it in loosely, and then I do a center line to show where the direction of the head was going. You can see I'm already diverging a little bit from the sketch that I had underneath. Okay, and then I want to find the action line. So the action line is kind of like where the spine is, and so for me the action here is a bit of an S shape. So it's kind of coming down and around like that, just like that. Okay. And that's pretty much where Tony Stark's spine would be if he was not all the way down to his leg, of course, but if he were inside this armor. Okay, and now the Hulkbuster suit, and of course, whenever I draw, I make sure I have reference around. So I got a picture here printed out, so I know what the Hulkbuster looks like, so I'm being accurate to that suit. There's a lot going on, and it can seem overwhelming when drawing a character like the Hulkbuster or like Iron Man. So really what I like to do is break it up into simple shapes, okay? So I know that I really want that big barrel chest. And if you're distracted by my watch already, I don't blame you. It is super cool. Just like that. Okay, so big barrel chest. Okay, and then we've got kind of a smaller torso, like that. Then we have his crotch piece. I know that sounds odd, but that's what it is. Just like that. So it really helps to have those pose studies underneath. And then I'm gonna bring his legs in. So I've got one that's kind of going back and one that's coming forward. And see how these are basic cylinder shapes right now? I don't need to do much more than that. I just need to understand how it's going to break up. So there's his knee, which I'm just really is just kind of an oval or a ball right now. And then he's got these almost bell-bottom-esque looking calves. If you don't know what bell-bottoms are, ask your grandma, your grandpa, or your mom and dad. They'll let you know. Okay. And then I'm going to come down over on this side. So I got that same ball right there. My sweet bell bottom pants, just like that. And you can see I'll lift up the vellum so you guys can see what's happening. So there you go. I hope you can see that online. But it's essentially I'm tracing over what I've already drawn, but not quite as sketchy because I already know really what the basic shapes are going to be. So I've got a shoulder over there, and then I've got a big forearm. And then I got his hand, so I'll get into the hand in a little bit. This big hand in the front, I want to make sure I get that guy. Looks like we've already got some questions coming in on Twitch. Thanks, guys. So first question from Champ Eagle 3. What inspires my work? Well, you know, a lot of things. You know, I work for Marvel, so I enjoy not just working at Marvel, but I also consume Marvel. I play the games. I've spent the bulk of this weekend playing the Avengers beta. If any of you got a chance to do that. I read our comics every week. I watch our movies and our TV shows. But in terms of artwork, you know, so many things inspire me. I'm inspired by life. I'm inspired by, you know, experiences that I have, just in general. So, yeah, lots of things inspire me. And, you know, sometimes I'll hear some music. Now, normally, right now, I'm talking to you guys while I'm drawing. But usually I have music going, and I always use music that is like appropriate to what the drawing is. My daughter likes to make fun of me for that. Like, she'll come in here and I'll be rocking some AC/DC or the soundtrack to the Iron Man films normally. But for you guys, we'll keep it chill. But if you want to play some AC/DC while you're drawing, it's all good. Okay. As you can see, I'm just kind of fleshing out the shapes that I've already made with my underdrawing, and I'm just taking them a little bit further. Okay, he's got a kind of a torso piece here, just like that. Got another question from DJ Bear. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. What is the best thing for a beginner to start with? I think the best thing for a beginner to start with is to not get overwhelmed with details. I think it's, you know, to look at things in life. If you're drawing a car or if you're drawing, you know, a building, is to start breaking it down into simple shapes like I'm doing here with the Hulkbuster. Like I said, there's so much happening with this suit. I want to make sure that I'm not getting too deep into the minutia just yet, but I'm really more just dealing with the large shapes. That's what helps me. Okay, and of course I do have this hand over here. I'm not going to forget about that one. Cool. Okay. So he's looking good. All right, now I'm gonna start to flesh this out just a bit more. I'm still using my blue colored pencil. I'm gonna start with this leg over here. So it's kind of a bulkier shape. It comes out off of that leg. Remember, this is a giant piece of armor that sits on top of Tony Stark. Now, if any of you are lefties like me, you will probably end up with a hand covered in lead. So I'm prepared for that eventuality. I'll show you what I do, which is probably the most low-tech option. I use another piece of paper to go underneath my hand. That's about the extent of it. Okay. Okay, so we got a little bit of a kneecap piece of armor here, just like that. A piece that's kind of like a calf. You see, I'm just building shapes on top of other shapes. Not getting too overwhelmed with details. It'd be easy to get overwhelmed. This armor. Like you've got a bit of a sole on that boot. So you can see how I just broke that up, right? And don't worry, I'll do this in darker lead so you guys can see that a little clearer. Okay, and that goes up into the pelvis, just like that. Okay. Just like that. Yeah, the trick is to just keep finding forms, really. So hope you guys are staying safe. Hope you guys are having fun. I love the idea of Stark Week, by the way. How cool is that? Kidding me? It's awesome. Not that every week shouldn't be Stark Week, but this week in particular will be Stark Week. So this is kind of like that. And I know I'm going fast. That's okay. You can see kind of while I'm doing these pieces, if you want to look up here and see how I've addressed the upper body, that might be a good way to handle it too. Got that big chunk right in front of the kneecap there, just like that. I mean, what I'm doing right now, drawing on vellum on top of a sketch, is pretty much how I've done it all of my career. So I started before I came to Marvel. I was actually a concept designer over at Walt Disney Imagineering. If any of you have heard of Imagineering, that's the group that is responsible for the design and execution and the build of everything at the Disney parks and resorts. And so I did that for about 10 years, worked on a variety of projects, mostly in concept, so very early days on most projects. And one of the projects I was able to be involved in, which was an absolute joy, for me. I mean, being a Marvel fan, lifelong Marvel fan, I was able to work on the Iron Man experience for Hong Kong Disneyland. So if any of you are from Hong Kong or been to Hong Kong or been on the Iron Man experience in Hong Kong, or the Iron Man experience in Hong Kong Disneyland, yeah, that was a project I got to work in. In fact, I made a cameo. I make a cameo in the attraction. So if you look really closely, if you write it in the first minutes of the film, I am one of the Stark technicians working on the Iron Wing vehicles. So that was my my lone screen appearance was in the Iron Man experience. So shout out to all of my team members that worked on the Iron Man experience in Hong Kong. Love you guys, miss you guys. So yeah, that was a blast. So we've been able to work on a lot of different Marvel projects for the Disney parks, and now as the creative director of themed entertainment, I'm involved in a lot of different projects like Avengers Station in Las Vegas. I work on, which if you've been to that, it's kind of like an immersive exhibit where you get to become a station agent and you get to step into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So if you get a chance to check that out, strong recommend. Okay. So now I'm coming into the torso here. This is kind of like two big shapes, just like that. Okay. Notice I'm not using any rulers or anything like that. I'm not getting that mired in the technical aspects of this right now. In fact, I really, frankly, I try to avoid most of that as much as I can, because then it starts to become laborious for me. That's just me. You know, it starts to become a bit of a headache. So I try to avoid being too technical and just be free and loose with my drawings. Looks like we got another question on YouTube. What tools would you use to eventually color this in? Um, Normally, I color everything these days in Photoshop. If you watch any of the other videos that we've done on here on the Marvel Entertainment YouTube channel, or on Marvel HQ, where I host Marvel Draw, you'll see that we quickly show some of the coloring of uh, each of those drawings, and I do use Photoshop. But in the day, I've used acrylics, I've used watercolor, I've used markers. Kind of doesn't really matter, whatever it is that you're comfortable with. So I'm coming in doing a little bit more detail here on the arm. I'm trying to kind of blast through these big shapes, you guys, so that we can get into the more of the details of this suit. Okay, I'm gonna do a quick sharpening of the pencil here. Let's go into that head, because we haven't really addressed that too much. So the head, so I treat it like I would, frankly, really any other face. He's just a little squattier, but he still has the center line coming down across the front, and then the eye line that goes across from left to right. And so I make his eyes right about there on that eye line. And then he's got that faceplate, the iconic kind of Iron Man faceplate, just like that. He's got a plate here in the front, and his faceplate follows that. And you can see that anytime this particular character, this particular armor gets drawn, it's always a little bit different. Everybody has a different take on it. The way it appeared in the films looks one way, and the way it's appearing in comics looks another way. I think that's part of the fun, frankly, for me as an artist. That's what I love about comics, is that each artist is going to put their own unique spin on these characters, and it's fun to see what everybody comes up with. Okay, just like that. And the hands are really, hands can be tough. I know a lot of people have trouble drawing hands, and hey, I'm with you. It's always kind of given me a hard time too. Some people love drawing them. For what I like to use, I break them up into segments, especially this particular type of hand, because he does actually have these joints that brings them all together. So I break it up into, like I said, those segments, and then in between are little joints that allow him to bend his fingers inside of that giant armor. Kind of like that. Okay. Let's see. I think we're looking pretty good. What do you guys think? Doing all right. You guys are, if you're not following along, at least you're having fun watching. I'm going to go ahead and put the blue pencil aside, and I'm going to go in with my darker pencil at this point. I do have a question on Facebook. What should I do when I'm stressed while doing some artwork? Well, artwork shouldn't be too stressful. I mean, it should be pretty relaxing. If you're stressed, maybe find some music to ease you. I think a lot of times what causes me stress is when I'm trying to meet a deadline. That stresses me out for sure. So I'm coming in and now I'm using my darker pencil. I'm going to cover part of this with this paper so I don't get too smudgy here. I'm coming in and putting in some of the details on this armor. like that. But yeah, if you're stressed out, try and find something that relaxes you. I tend to avoid music that has lyrics. I know I mentioned AC/DC before, which obviously has lyrics, but I try to avoid music like that. I'm more gravitate towards scores from films. That's one of the things that I like to do. Come down here. We got this little side piece. What I love about drawing this character is that here's a fun fact, guys. I've never actually drawn him completely before. I mean, before getting this assignment, of course, I did practice before coming live here, but I've never had to actually draw the full Hulkbuster suit, so it was kind of something fun and new for me too. Draw a lot of Spider-Man. I do a lot of drawing tutorials, as you guys have seen, obviously here and other places. I've done drawing tutorials at the Disney parks or at D23, the D23 Expo. I've taught how to draw different characters, and Spider-Man tends to come up a lot. Spider-Man is, for me, is not a too terribly difficult character to draw. It takes a little while because he's got all that webbing, but he's a much easier character because there's a lot of freedom with what you can do with him. You can put him in just about any pose, and it works for Spidey. With Iron Man, you got to be a little bit more technical. But what I do like about Iron Man, or even the Hulkbuster, is that there's a lot of angles. It's a much more angular character. So for some reason, I find that enjoyable. Okay, so I'm going to go in and do these eyes, just like that. Unlike Iron Man, he doesn't have quite as big of a brow. He's got a little bit of a brow. He's got a little bit of an armored piece here in the front, just like that. There's our face plate. We're going to come over the top. See that dome. He's got a little bit of a armored piece comes up over here. You notice that I kind of jump around a lot. That's just how I do it. That's not a technique or anything. I get easily bored, guys, and so I got to move around and move on to different things to keep me entertained. So like right now, I'm just doing this little shoulder piece here, just like that. Let's see. Was there on Facebook got a question? Was there a specific model you were basing this Hulkbuster on? This is really what we would call kind of the comic book or kind of an evergreen version of the Hulkbuster. So this is really more comic book based, more so than the films per se. So yeah, that's the one I'm doing here. And then who's my favorite Marvel character? Of course, you got to have an answer for that question if you work at Marvel, because everybody wants to know who your favorite is. So my favorite Marvel character, it changes all the time. my current favorite, I really love Frank Castle, the Punisher. I just think he's super cool. I mean, part of that was the John Barenthal interpretation of Frank Castle. I just thought was awesome on Netflix. But I also, I love Star-Lord. I love, his musical sensibilities are very much in line with mine as a child of the 80s. So I appreciate his music. And then I also love Iron Man. I have a soft spot in my heart for Iron Man. A lot of that has to do with how much time I spent thinking about Tony Stark when working on the Iron Man experience at attraction at Hong Kong Disneyland. You know, whenever you're doing an attraction like that, you have to really get into the psyche of the character and understand why they would do some of the things that you're doing, because you're designing as if they designed it. You know, it's not supposed to be the Imagineers or me. You know, it's what would Tony Stark do? You know, how would he put on this expo in Hong Kong Disneyland? And so that is fun and also challenging to get yourself out of your own mindset, get yourself out of your own way, and think about how the character would create that. And that's part of creating really an immersive experience. If you've done anything at the Disney park, you know it's always about immersion into those stories. See on Twitch, how do you handle deadlines for your artwork? Well, you make sure you meet them for one. You gotta meet your deadlines, you know, because that's your reputation that's on the line if you don't meet your deadlines. So you want to make sure that you are. Sorry, I'm covering this up, guys. I just want to make sure I don't smudge everything. Sorry, deadlines. Yes. So you want to make sure you're meeting your deadlines. Sometimes I've worked all night trying to get to meet my deadlines, and sometimes, you know, when you're doing art, it may not look quite right the first time you do it, and that's, you know, you may have to start over. You know, my wife knows firsthand that I've woken up in the middle of the night knowing that a piece is just not quite right, and I need to start over again, and that's, you know, that's part of the deal, is making sure that you meet your deadlines, and in some cases you may work all night and they still don't love it, you know, the people that you're trying to meet, whether it's your boss or an executive or somebody like that. So I just try to stick with it, and you know, and try and develop a thick skin when you get criticism or feedback. So I'm not going into a lot of detail underneath that hand, and that's because there's a light in his palm, as you guys know. And so I'm gonna just come in with some hatching here. And most of this is going to be dark, because I want to really emphasize the fact that there is light emanating from his palm. Okay, let you guys get it, you know, check out how I'm doing on that arm right there, to give you a sense of you know, where I will ultimately take this. I'm going to go ahead and do this outline. As you guys know, if you followed any of my drawing tutorials, I do love these outlines. I don't know why. I guess it just kind of frames them up, makes the character look a little bit more complete to me. I don't always do it. I think a strong silhouette is important when you're drawing a character. So if you can read that it's Hulkbuster from ways away, then that's a good thing. I noticed my board shifted a little bit. Hope that wasn't too troublesome for you guys. Okay. So now we've done. I'm gonna call that arm good. Maybe I'll do a little bit of more detail on this underarm here. Just like that. I'll pull it off so you guys can see kind of how that's looking. Just like that. All right, so now we're going to come in on the top, this piece here. We're going to finish off this chest piece. Let's do that. Okay. little bit of shading. One of the things that does give me trouble sometimes is shading metallic objects. Much easier to do for me when I'm coloring or I'm in paint. But penciling metallic objects has always been challenging for me. Some guys are really good at it. And that's always been not a strength of mine. I'll come up with a little bit more detail on that chest piece. Just like that. Do this. Kind of like that. So this is underneath his arm down here. So this is going to be mostly in shadow. But it is the edge of an armored piece. So it comes down like that. Okay. Let's see, we got a question on on Twitch. Have you done any awesome artwork in Marvel comic books? I've never drawn any interiors of Marvel comics. Definitely want to. I have done a lot of variant covers. One of the projects I was lucky to be involved in was the Disney Kingdoms line of comics, which I actually helped co-create with some fellow Imagineers. Shout out to Josh Shipley and Jim Clark and Andy DiGenova and Tom Morris, some of my Imagineer buddies that we helped create the Disney Kingdoms line of comics. And we did, we did Haunted Mansion, we did Seekers of the Weird, Figment, Enchanted Tiki Room, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. And so those were comic books based on the Disney theme park projects, obviously. And so those were a ton of fun to do. And really the idea behind that line of comics was to kind of do what the Pirates of the Caribbean did for the movies, but do them in comic book form. And so we were able to tell new stories using moments you remember from the attractions, and tell completely new stories in those worlds and those environments. So that was fun. So I did a lot of variant covers for that. Did a lot of character designs, story work. I did a variant cover for the Guardians of the Galaxy, Mission Breakout comic book that we did when we opened that attraction at Disney's California Adventure. Just a little pulsar right there. So I did a variant cover for that, and I did one for the Iron Man experience. We did a tie-in comic for the Iron Man experience in Hong Kong, so I did a variant cover for that. So yes, I've had my share of variant covers with Marvel Comics, but yes, I would love to do some interior pages at some point. I actually started in comics before I went to Disney. I was a comic book artist, and so that's where I got my start doing some independent projects. That helped me get my foot in the door at Disney, and then ultimately here at Marvel. So yeah, so I've kind of come full circle. Now I'm back working at a comic book company. Let's see. Do you have a favorite Iron Man story arc from comics or movies? I don't know that I have a favorite. I think I just like the character in general. I think he's a lot of fun. I know he has a lot of very famous story arcs in both comics and film. I think the arc that he went through in the MCU was pretty amazing. What they were able to do with that character, considering back in 2008. Before the Iron Man film came out, he was not nearly as well known, right? But now my grandma can tell you who Tony Stark is, and that's always impressive when grandma can tell you who who a Marvel character is. It's amazing to me that we are where we are in the Marvel universe. When you think about, I mean, the fact that now everybody knows Groot and Rocket Raccoon and Yondu, and I mean, these characters that were really, if you weren't a huge Marvel fan, these were pretty deep cuts into the Marvel universe. You had to really be a Marvel fanboy or fangirl to know who those characters were. And now the whole world knows who they are, which is awesome. And you can not only just read about them in comics, you can watch them in movies and play them in video games, and it's amazing to me where the Marvel universe is today. You see, I'm doing a nice outline around the full hand because I want to push that into the foreground. Hope this is fun for you guys. There's been so many awesome Marvel Draw videos and live streams. Some of my good friends and artists, even the ones that I don't know personally, really did an amazing job showing you guys their process. And I think that's been the fun for me, is seeing how everybody's process is just a little bit different, which is totally cool. I'll put a little bit of texture on that hand because it's in the front. Come in, do this, some head detail here. Let's see. On Twitch, what's the most difficult character to draw? The Hulkbuster. Just kidding. The most difficult character to draw? Oh, gosh. I mean, I think, Rocket Raccoon has been kind of hard for me. Drawing animals is not always necessarily my favorite thing to draw. I can do it, but I'd say Rocket. Rocket is hard. You want to get the scale right. Hulk is hard to draw. I've long had challenges drawing the Hulk. A lot of it is his face. Is you want to show the aggression, but at the same time you want it to. You still got to look human, so you can't distort his face too much. Let's see. It says I got another question. What's your focus when doing concept art, character designs, landscapes, and environments? Well, when I did concept at the parks, you do far less character work. It's really more about the environments, and because when you're doing a parks experience, you have to change how you think about telling stories. It suddenly becomes less about watching a character do something and more about the experience that the guest or the rider on the vehicle is going to have. And so that is a completely different way of telling stories. It's one that I've always enjoyed, but it's definitely different. And so you think more about the environments and the locations and the things that they'll be seeing more so than what a character is actually going to be doing. Who is my favorite X-Men character? Iceman. I always liked Iceman. I think that goes back to my love of Spider-Man and his amazing friends, the great cartoon from the 80s, which you can watch on Disney Plus, which I have been doing, going back and reliving my childhood. Spider-Man and his amazing friends, such a great cartoon. But yeah, I always liked Iceman. He was actually probably the first character outside of Spider-Man that I knew. Iceman and Firestar. So I got to know who they were through that show, and that kind of opened my eyes a little bit to the larger Marvel universe. Another character that I love from the X-Men is Bishop. When I first started reading comics, so I was about 10. I started reading comics and then discovered the X-Men when I was about 12. And the first X-Men comic I got was the first appearance of Bishop. And here's this, a lot of mystery surrounding the character at that time. Who was he? He had the big M on his face, and a lot of things that just, oh my gosh, you didn't know what they you know, what was happening with him. So I always thought Bishop was kind of cool. Plus he had that sweet, you know, Jerry curl haircut, which who doesn't love that, right? So let's go. Bishop and Iceman are my two favorite X-Men. What's your favorite Spider-Man pose to draw? I think, you know, pose. I mean, that's like I said before. That's kind of one of the things that I really love about Spider-Man is you can pretty much put him in any pose you want, and it works because he's so limber. Todd McFarlane, you know, has long been my favorite artist and kind of a hero of mine, and I loved what he brought to Spider-Man. Just in terms, not only his posing, but the webbing and everything that kind of went with that. So I loved Todd's take on Spider-Man. For me, in terms of pose, I think I like, you know, I like to draw more of the quieter moments, more so than a lot of the action. I know some people really love drawing action. I think I like drawing characters, you know, talking. I like characters, you know, those are some of my favorite moments in comics is when, not so much, you know, and I love the punching and all that stuff. It's cool. But when there's really good character moments and they're interacting with each other, I think those are some of my favorite moments. You know, I think back to, you know, some of the earlier comics that I would read, and you certainly had, you had, you know, Captain America and Iron Man and Thor, and they're all kind of hanging around the Avengers mansion in full costume, which I always thought was awesome. So in my mind, you know, they never put on their street clothes. They just, you know, would hang out in their costumes. Maybe flip the cowl back off the back of your head, but for the most part, they were hanging out in costume. So I always thought that was cool. Same with like the X-Men. You know, when they're in the X Mansion, they're at Xavier's school, they're going to classes, and they're all in full costume, which I love that. So we got a question. How do I become a Marvel artist? Well, you got to get really good. I know that seems like a kind of a dumb answer, but you do. You got to practice your craft, and draw everything. You know, draw your family, draw things you see outside. There's, you know, I think you just got to practice. There's really no substitute for working hard, in my personal opinion. You know, nobody's going to show up at your door and say, hey, we've got nobody who wants to draw Marvel Comics today. Maybe you would like to draw Marvel Comics. That will never happen, because lots of people want to draw Marvel Comics. So you've got to get yourself out there and show lots of people your work. You know, I used to go down to Comic-Con in San Diego before I got hired, and I would show my work to anybody who would let me show them, because I wanted feedback. I wanted to, you know, understand what I was doing well and what I wasn't doing so well, and that was helpful to me, because, you know, a lot of the things that you show, you know, and if my mother is watching, I appreciate your feedback, I really do, but sometimes mom thinks everything you do is awesome, so sometimes you need to show other people and get their take, get their feedback on your art. I remember when I was in junior high, my friend used to tell me that the legs I drew were too stubby, and I thought he was a pretty cool guy, and he knew comics, and so I always wanted to make sure he didn't think my legs were too stubby when I drew. So I would frequently show him my work, and if I got his approval, then that was cool. So really just show everybody your work, and just keep practicing and trying to get better. You see, we're putting in some of the detail on the legs here. You know, I like to do a little bit of texture. It shows a little bit of battle damage. Those of you who had action figures in the 80s, you remember battle damage action figures. So I definitely like to show that there's been some love here. Okay, it's coming along. It's looking pretty good. Cool. You guys are having fun watching this. Let's see. Who is your favorite Marvel villain? Favorite Marvel villain is the Red Skull. I just think the Red Skull he's great. He's terrible. Don't get me wrong. He's awful. But he's great for storytelling because he looks like a bad guy. There's no kind of sugarcoating who he is. He is what he is, and he is a villain. I think he's kind of like Darth Vader in that way. You know, if you've never seen Star Wars, um, and the second you see Darth Vader, you know that's the bad guy. He's the villain of the story, and he's the guy I'm not rooting for. You know, this is before we knew who Anakin Skywalker was and all that stuff. So this is back in the day, guys, when we were still learning about who Darth Vader was. And the Red Skull, you just look at him, you go, yeah, I know he's the bad guy. So, so the Red Skull, I think, is just a tremendous villain. My favorite Disney ride. I love that you guys are asking about all my favorite stuff, because that's my favorite stuff to talk about. That's my favorite stuff. My favorite Disney ride. So, as an adult, I got to go with Haunted Mansion or Pirates of the Caribbean. Love both of those. But as my favorite ride since I was a kid, and still will always have a soft spot for, is Peter Pan's flight. And I've been on all the Peter Pan's flights around the world. I've been fortunate enough to visit every Disney park in the world. That was a goal that my wife and I set, and we finally got out to Tokyo and got to ride, or got to visit Tokyo Disneyland, Tokyo Disney Sea. It's just amazing parks out there. So if you get a chance to go out to Tokyo, strong recommend on those parks. My favorite Avenger. Let's see. My favorite Avenger. Well, I mean, it's got to be Tony Stark, Iron Man, right? It's Stark Week after all. Can't just be. My wife loves Thor. I have no idea why. I can't put it together. I'm not sure why she loves Thor so much. I'm sure it has nothing to do with Chris Hemsworth. Might have everything to do with Chris Hemsworth. No, can't blame her. He's a good-looking dude. Okay, so coming together here, guys. We're close to the end of this. Close to the end of this Hulkbuster. But stay tuned. After we finish this one, we're going to do another kind of close-up shot on just the head. So you guys get to check that out and how that looks. You see I'm going in with some of the details here, some of the texture and line work. That's some of the fun. And I think every time I draw the armor, it's a little bit differently. That's a little bit different. So we're going to come in with the calves here. It's got some interesting calf armor. Just like that. One thing you do want to think about when you're drawing is also, when you're doing shading, think about your light sources. So with Iron Man, with Hulkbuster, you got a few different light sources. You've got his repulsors, you've got his arc reactor in his chest, you got his eyes, and then you also have whatever kind of sunlight is hitting him. So, you got to think about all those different light sources. So he can be very challenging to draw in that way. So, one of the questions earlier was which characters are hard to draw. Iron Man's right up there. And I joked about Hulkbuster, but now that we're this far along, he's not an easy character to draw, guys. There's a lot going on here, but we're having fun. And that's the important thing. Hope everyone's staying safe as well. I know these are challenging times. A lot of time spent indoors and with loved ones. Hope you're all staying healthy and safe. I love being able to come out to the conventions. One of my jobs at Marvel is to oversee our conventions at various cons around the world. And most of the time I make it out to see them in person. Not always, but most of the time. And if I do see you at another con in the future, please come up and say hi, introduce yourself. I love getting to meet all of you, and we can just sit and talk Marvel. Okay, I promise that's what we'll do. We'll just talk about all the cool stuff happening in the Marvel universe. And I know it's been trying to not be able to go to the cons this year, but next year, fingers crossed, we'll be back in business, and we'll be able to go and interact with each other yet again. Okay, doing some outside kind of silhouette line work here. So we got another question. Do you have a favorite piece of Iron Man tech? Well, I really like the Hall of Armor, kind of the classic Hall of Armor, but I also like some of the more obscure Iron Man suits. I love like stealth suit and things like that are just kind of different. There was a storyline not too long ago called Superior Iron Man, where he had a full white suit, and I thought it was really cool. Really cool look, really different from anything we had seen him in before. So I actually really dug that suit. His face was exposed, which that was a little different for me. But I forgot to mention when I'm talking about light sources. I'm gonna switch out my paper here. He also has these kneecap light sources, so little reactors, and then when he's flying, he's got some underneath those boots. So those are ones you gotta keep in mind as well. Some line work on that kneecap. Texture over on that side over there. There we go. We are closing in, guys. We've got those calf pieces of armor. A little bit of shadow, just show a little bit of lip underneath there. A bit of shade over there. Let's see, we've got some more questions. What kind of pencil for sketching is best? Like I said, I don't want to endorse any particular brand, but I like these. I think you could find any brand. So like a B or an HB are ones that I like. Here's an HB, and they're just they're just lighter. You guys can see that. Different weights. If you're doing, like, I can use this HB and come in and do some extra detail in the armor. Get you a little bit of extra something. And I wouldn't do that with a big, thick pencil, but with an HB, I'd do that. Okay. When drawing a character in a heroic pose, what should I focus on more? I think you want to focus on, you want to think about the storytelling. What are you trying to convey? I think you want to, I always like to start with the silhouette and think about what that silhouette is going to look like, and so that the character is recognizable. Spider-Man is great at that because, very few characters kind of work in those poses. But a heroic, like I said, but it always comes back to story. And so sometimes you need a great, a really strong, heroic pose, and other times you don't. Other times you need to be more subtle with it. So I would recommend practicing drawing a variety of different poses. I took a lot of life drawing classes in school, and through those I was able to draw live models, and that's nothing really replaces that. It's getting to draw very quickly, drawing a lot of different gestures. So sometimes you'd have to draw a gesture in 30 seconds. Sometimes you'd have, a minute, or sometimes you'd have an hour, and all of that was really helpful for me as I was learning. See, I'm coming back in with my HB. I'm going to do a little bit more because this is forward. So this is going to have a bit more detail in it than say that boot would be, because this boot is up close and personal here. So we're going to come in and make sure that we get all of our details in here. Now, if I was doing this as a comic book, after I do these pencils, this would then go to an inker. In some cases, people ink themselves. In other cases, you give it to another artist who will go over it with ink, and they always add something new, add something different than what you saw. And I think it's really cool to work collaboratively with different partners like that. And then after being inked, it would go on to a colorist, and that's where it really starts to sing. That's when you get a lot of great lighting effects and things like that. And we have some amazing colorists here at Marvel, and they really add a whole new dimension to your work. Okay, so we're getting pretty close, guys. Got one more question. When did you first get into drawing comic book characters? I don't remember a time when I wasn't drawing comic book characters, to be honest. I mean, that's kind of all I've ever done. Anybody who knows me will confirm that. That's what I've done, at every stage of my life. When I was in elementary school, I drew superheroes. When I was in college, I drew superheroes. And now as an adult, guess what? I'm drawing superheroes still. So I love superheroes. I love the costumes. I love the colors. I love the stories. There's just I really do love superheroes. So it's hard to imagine my career being anything other than being right here at Marvel and drawing superheroes for a living. I really do love it. And I used to turn my friends into superheroes. When I was in school, everybody wanted to see themselves in a costume or something like that. So I would do a lot of, I'll call them commissions, but they were not commissions for money. It was just commissions for fun. And so that's something that I did quite a bit of. Let's see. What advice do you have for someone who wants to work for Marvel more on the project and planning side, not necessarily the artistic side? My recommendation is to get in touch with people that do the kind of work that you want to do. I think that's what's, to have a passion, to have a love for the characters is great, but really you need to think about the work that you want to do each and every day. So, you can go on LinkedIn or any of those kind of social networking sites and find people that do the things that you want to do. Even just maybe as simple as opening up a comic book and looking at the credits and seeing who the folks are that you want to, the jobs that you'd like to do, and talking to them and getting advice. Okay, so before we move on to questions, guys, I'm gonna call this Hulkbuster full body shot. I'm gonna call this done here. So as always, whenever you're done, you got to make sure you sign it. That makes it yours. So I'm gonna put Brian Crosby down here in the left-hand corner, and that is the full body shot of the Hulkbuster. So hope you guys had fun watching that. Stay tuned. We're not quite done yet. So I'm going to switch out. I'll pull that off so you guys can see that maybe a little bit better. Okay. All right, so we're going to get rid of that. And while I'm doing this, let me just take a minute and again talk to you guys about these watches. They're so sick. Can I just show you guys the box it came in? The box itself is amazing. Check this out. I hope you guys can see this. So it says Marvel Citizen, red and gold, as if Tony Stark picked out the colors himself. Okay. And then you open it up, and then there's an I love you 3000, I love you 3000 card. Okay. Limited edition. It says this Citizen timepiece featuring Marvel's Tony Stark is one of only 1,500 produced worldwide. Okay. And then And then the watch was actually in here on this arc reactor. You guys, that is as cool as it gets. Okay. And another thing to know about the watch is actually powered by the Eco Drive. So it doesn't require a battery. It's all powered by light. So it's a really awesome piece. And that's not me being a shill for this. This is me being a fanboy and geeking out over something that's genuinely so cool. Okay. So with that, we are going to move on to the Hulkbuster, kind of a bust shot. Okay, so you can see here's my sketch that I did previously. Again, same process. Just trying to find the pose that I liked. And while I'm doing this, you guys have any other questions? I've loved the questions that you guys have thrown my way. It's been a lot of fun interacting with you guys. And I'm going to get a quick drink of water. Okay. And now I'm going to get my sheet of vellum, just like I did before. Okay. And I'm going to set this over the top. This is old school style, guys. This is how we do it. So how Dad did it. It's how America does it. Name that quote. All right. Now I go back to my old reliable, my blue colored pencil, and we are going to sketch in the Hulkbuster head. So we're not going to do a full body. Hope you guys had fun with that one. Again, if I went too fast, and I know I did, I know there was a lot there, go back and watch the video. You can pause it when you need to, and just have fun. Have fun finding those shapes. Okay, so again, no different here. No different here as I'm drawing the head. You know, I know I'm going to start with that big oval. Okay, what's great about this is I'm going to be able to get in and do a little bit more detail on the face. I think that's actually one of my favorite things to draw are faces. When I sit down and just sketch, more often than not, I draw characters' faces. I love them. I love coming up with different expressions and things like that. Okay. So now we got these kind of these shoulder pieces here. I don't necessarily love the way I drew those in my sketch, so I'm gonna fix that a little bit. That's part of the artistic process too, guys, is just finding your style, finding what works for you. She's got those big, almost kind of shoulder pads. He's a big football player. American football, for those of you who are our international viewers. Okay. Now we're going to go into the face. So we've got the center line, like always, right down the center. And then I'm going to come across eyes. And that's where the eyes are going to sit. They're going to sit on that eye line. Okay. Now he's got a little bit of his arc reactor here showing. And he's got some chest pieces that come down like this, which I notice I did not draw those in my sketch, earlier sketch. That's okay. I discovered that I kind of want to include them here. And we've got the outside of that circle. The outside here. We've got these kind of like almost like exhaust ports that are, I don't think that's what they are, but they sit kind of on top of those shoulders. Maybe you can fire missiles out of them. Who knows? You guys do, because you're the Marvel fans. You guys know all this stuff. As well you should. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and do the eye line. And go back to the eyes, excuse me. And so we're going to draw. His eyes are kind of rectangular and a little bit more elongated, much more so than maybe a traditional Iron Man eye. Kind of like that. And then we've got that faceplate. The faceplate is so signature Iron Man. He's got it on just about every armor, I think, with the exception of maybe like the superior one, like I talked about before. Okay. So if you guys still have questions, keep them coming. Thought that was really fun getting to interact with you guys. Normally, I'm just sitting here talking to myself while I do this, and I guess in a way, I'm still kind of talking to myself, but that's okay. Such is the life of an artist sometimes, having to learn to interact with yourself in a room. Okay. Keep yourself entertained. Drawing superheroes all day. What could be better, guys? What could be better? So he's got kind of this collar that comes down. So the faceplate sits here and almost comes down just a hair like that. Do you have another question on YouTube? How do I make my characters look less stiff? You know, that is a hard one. That's something that I think every artist struggles with. Is, you know, their characters feeling stiff or not feeling like there's motion or movement. I mean, it is a still image that you're trying to show motion. Maybe you read a comic book, you go from panel to panel, and your brain fills in the gaps. Your imagination fills in the gaps. And so to me, one of the things that I like to do is just be loose. And I think a lot of times, you know, you see how, you know, everything I'm doing right now is always so sketchy. It's very, that's how I like to draw. Because I think my characters will also feel stiff if I get too mired in detail too early. I like to just really find the form and then go from there. And once I find the form and then it feels loose and natural, I think that's something that helps me. So you might want to give that a shot if your characters are feeling stiff. Is kind of loosen up, you know. And sometimes that can even just be the way you're drawing. You know, if you're, you know, a lot of times I will stand up and draw, and you know, just kind of draw from your shoulder. Much more so than noodling with your fingers and your wrist, if that makes sense. So that's my recommendation. So just loosen up and not get so. Don't worry about the details too early; they'll come. Okay. So I got a pretty good underdrawing there in blue. So I'm gonna again put aside my blue pencil. I'm gonna do a quick sharpen on my HB. Make sure that's nice and sharp. Let's see, what's the first thing I'm going to eat when I get back into Disney? I assume you mean into Disneyland or Walt Disney World. The first thing I'm going to eat, it's got to be a Dole Whip right there outside Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room. That's my favorite Disneyland snack, is the Dole Whip. And I know there are other flavors and they're great, but for me, old school pineapple Dole Whip is my snack of choice at Disneyland. It's awesome. Awesome question. I know we all miss the parks, right? I love going to the parks with my family, and I definitely miss being in there. There's a great vibe in the parks. So hopefully they'll be back open again soon. We can all get back and we'll have fun together, riding rides and people watching and doing all the things. Okay. So I'm going into the detail on some of this the shoulder pad here. Let's see, have you drawn a full-on battle? Haven't drawn a lot of full-on battles, but I have drawn them. They're very time-consuming, so I don't draw them a lot. I draw them kind of when I need to. I did some kind of a battle on the like the variant cover. I'm trying to think of ones that you guys could see. The variant cover for the Iron Man Experience comic book. It's not necessarily a full-on battle, but there was definitely a lot of characters in there. And I think, when you draw a battle, I think the important thing is to, again, not get so mired in details, but you want to, just be loose and have, I draw with a lot of stick figures all over the place and just using cylinders and circles and shapes and finding something that looks organic. And that goes back to that earlier question about drawings feeling too stiff. I think there's a tendency to want to draw every figure in completion or completely, and then it kind of looks like, if you guys remember color forms, for those of you who are children of the 80s, it was kind of like you pasted on these characters all over an image. What you want when you're drawing a battle, you want to have a lot of overlapping characters. So we're going in on face plate here. Thank you guys for all your questions. This has been great. I was a little nervous about this. Drawing live can be a little nerve-wracking because, like I said, usually it's a very isolated experience. You're kind of by yourself. But being able to interact with you guys live has been super cool. It's been fun. Okay, so I'm sorry about that. I'm just going to go over the top of this, that dome, just like that. Come down around here. Draw that collar. Here's our face plate. I hope you guys do these drawings and you share them with us. I love seeing the drawings that you guys come up with. Put on your music, make the sound effects. I always like to say sound effects help everything look cooler. So we're going to come in with a little bit of detail here. See that? Sound effect. Boom. Just like that. So this is where you start to see some of the more of the line work in the helmet and in the armor, which is fun to draw. I love that stuff. This is actually a little bit set in like that. You see that? So that piece actually goes inward in the helmet. Okay, so we got a question. What's your favorite movie score when you are drawing your awesome art? Well, first of all, I'm going to say thank you for saying that my art is awesome. That is very flattering. So assuming the art is awesome, and again, thank you. My favorite score to listen to, well, like I said, I listen to whatever characters I'm drawing. That's what gets me inspired. But if I had to pick one score to listen to, my favorite score is Captain America: The First Avenger. I think that score is so super heroic, and I love all the kind of the World War II sounds. just everything about it I think is just so cool. I love Captain America: The First Avenger. That's actually my favorite Marvel Studios film, which I assume that would be a question probably next. Is, I love Captain America: First Avenger. The bum, dun, 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 so good. Listen to it all day. Doing some detail here. Base plate. We have a little bit of a ridge there. So I want to come in and show that ridge. There we go. I'll let you guys kind of check that out for a second. And so now we're gonna come in. Do some of these reflection shading, just like that. I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna color these guys too. I want to color in there because that's dark space in there, just like that. I think we need a little bit of battle damage, right? Let's do a little texture on these. So not going too crazy, but just doing a little bit of damage, a little bit of grime and grit. I always think that makes it look cool. Put a little bit of that over here. Let's see, we got a, what's the hardest common object to draw? Well, the hard part with common objects in general is people know what they look like. Not everybody can necessarily draw, let's say, a telephone, right? Or draw a car. But they know when your drawing doesn't look like a car or look like a telephone. So common objects can be tough. When you're drawing stuff in space and blasters and things like that, you have a lot more freedom because you're kind of making it up. But when you're drawing common objects, it is a little harder. So I would say, in terms of what's the hardest to draw, for me, it is what I just kind of mentioned, drawing like a car. Cars are hard, especially when they're in like perspective. I know some artists probably it's a blast and it's their favorite thing in the world to draw. Those are always tough for me. I think that's the if you take anything away from today's lesson, it's that there's a lot of hard things to draw. But you got to practice. That's how you get better. You just practice and draw the things that you love to draw, of course, because you want to keep drawing that stuff, but also draw the things that you hate to draw. Because if you're drawing comics, you are going to have to learn how to draw everything. Okay. I'm putting a little bit more detail here. Coming here with the shade, reflection stuff. Okay. We gotta do this chest piece here. So I'm actually gonna use my 6B for this armor in the front because it's in the foreground. Help me kind of pop that off. I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna outline this stuff. And I love the way this line kind of just carries over right into that line. Makes it kind of a complete statement over there. I think it looks cool. This is just slightly raised. And we're going to come in and outline here. Just like that. we go. Looking cool. See, we've got another question. How did you develop your own style? How did I develop my own style? You know, I've heard a lot of artists talk about this. I think most recently I've heard Scotty Young talk about this because his style is so distinct. And I really loved his answer, which was, and Scotty, I apologize if I'm getting this wrong, buddy, but it's the style you after you draw and draw and draw and you keep messing up and then reverting back to whatever it is that you drew well, or whatever kind of naturally comes to you. I think that's where you'll start to find your style and how it's maybe a little bit different. And so for me, my style is kind of born of that. It's those things that if I sit down and just draw instinctually and don't think about it, that's where my style comes from. And there's certainly I get inspired by other artists and the things that they do. There's so many influences. I mentioned Todd McFarlane already. He's one of my influences growing up. Joe Quesada, his art style certainly inspired me. And I'm not saying that because he's my boss, but I loved his style and the way he approaches things. Those were some of the, Humberto Ramos is one of my favorites. I have a lot of favorites, a lot of artists. Todd Knock, that I really enjoy. Just so many. But don't want to copy their style either. So I try to do my own thing, because I think that's what makes comics work really well. So I'm going to fix this. This piece comes down a little lower than that one did. So part of the artistic process too is finding where your mistakes are and correcting them. What were the most inspiring comics you read growing up? Certainly Spider-Man. Again, I'm going to keep going back to the well, but Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man, that really influenced me in a big way. The X-Men, I think I found something in the X-Men that was different from other superheroes. At the time, there was, they didn't have man necessarily in the title. They were just kind of, it was kind of it's just a weird collection of individuals. And so I always thought the X-Men were really unique and cool. So the X-Men comics really influenced me. Okay. And guys, look at that. I want to do, sorry, you thought I was done, but I wasn't. I want to outline over here. So I'm going to finish this statement off just like that. Kind of complete that statement. Okay. And then of course, at the end of the drawing, we have to sign it. Put your name in there. I'm going to do mine over here. All right, Brian Crosby. And there you go. There's the bust of the Hulkbuster. I'll bring the full body back in here for a second. You guys can see this. So those are our two. See the vellum? See how it's transparent? But those are the two drawings that we did today. I hope you guys had fun doing this. I know I had a blast doing this. So, keep practicing, keep drawing, keep developing your style, and just have fun. Have fun drawing all the different characters from the Marvel Universe. Hulkbuster, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Ghost Rider, whoever you want. Draw the characters that you love. So I just want to say, again, thank you guys for watching How to Draw Live, presented by Citizen. And if you do want to learn more about the watch, again, super cool. Is there anything cooler than this watch? This is the Tony Stark I Love You 3000 limited edition watch and box set. Check it out on citizenwatch.com. And again, you guys, as always, thanks for watching. And make mine Marvel. All right, guys. This has been Brian Crosby. Hope you guys had fun. Make mine Marvel. Go out there and do some drawings. See ya.